in our assessment about the dynamic within the Indo-Pacific.
Signed in Paris by Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. and French Minister for the Armed Forces Catherine Vautrin. The agreement establishes the legal framework for French and Philippine forces to train together, conduct joint exercises, and deepen defense cooperation. But this is about far more than military drills. It marks the first time a European military power has formally joined the Philippines' growing network of security partners, signaling that the strategic competition unfolding in the Indo-Pacific is no longer being shaped solely by the United States and regional allies. So why is France expanding its military partnership with a country more than 10,000 kilometers away? And what does that reveal about the future of security in the Indo-Pacific? But before we go any further, here's an important question. If France and the Philippines already had friendly relations, why did they need another agreement? The answer is simple. A Status of Visiting Forces Agreement, or SOVFA, is not a military alliance. It doesn't create permanent foreign bases or require either country to fight for the other. Instead, it provides the legal framework that allows their armed forces to work together smoothly. Once it takes effect, the agreement covers joint military exercises, troop visits, logistics, humanitarian assistance, disaster response, maritime security, and the legal status of visiting military personnel. Without a framework like this, even routine military activities can become legally and administratively complicated. With it, both countries can train, coordinate, and respond to regional challenges far more efficiently.
We don't need any other player to act ourselves. And as regards South China Sea or water in the Indo-Pacific, we have constantly exercised our freedom of navigation ourselves and will definitely continue doing so.
That's why Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. described the agreement as a foundation for expanding defense cooperation. Beyond military training, it is designed to improve maritime domain awareness, emergency response, and interoperability between the two armed forces.
And in the maritime domain, we see common challenges in Europe and in the Indo-Pacific by actors of similar persuasion.
In short, this agreement doesn't create a new alliance, it makes an existing partnership more practical and effective. But that raises an even bigger question. If the agreement is simply a legal framework, why was France so eager to become the first European country to sign one with the Philippines? The answer begins with a surprising fact. France isn't entering the Indo-Pacific. It already lives there. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. At first glance, France seems like an unlikely security partner for the Philippines. Paris is more than 10,000 kilometers from Manila. So why would a European country invest so heavily in security on the other side of the world? Because France isn't entering the Indo-Pacific. It already lives there. Unlike most European nations, France is a resident Indo-Pacific power. Through overseas territories such as New Caledonia, French Polynesia, Wallis and Futuna, Réunion, and Mayotte, nearly 1.6 million French citizens live across the region. These territories also give France one of the world's largest exclusive economic zones, with most of its maritime territory located in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. That means what happens in the Indo-Pacific isn't someone else's problem for France. It's a matter of national security. And France isn't just flying its flag on a map. It permanently stations around 7,000 military personnel across the region, supported by naval forces, maritime patrol aircraft, surveillance assets, and regular deployments of frontline warships. Earlier this year, the Charles de Gaulle Carrier Strike Group trained with the Philippine Navy and Air Force in the South China Sea before making a port call at Subic Bay. French warships also regularly participate in multinational exercises and freedom of navigation operations throughout the region. This explains why France has its own Indo-Pacific strategy. Protecting its territories, defending freedom of navigation, and strengthening partnerships with countries like the Philippines aren't optional. They're part of France's long-term national strategy. So when France signed its first visiting forces agreement with the Philippines, it wasn't announcing its arrival in the Indo-Pacific. It was reinforcing a region where it already has people, territory, and strategic interests. But that raises another question. If France has been an Indo-Pacific power for decades, why did this agreement happen now? The answer lies in a much bigger shift. One driven not just by France, but by the Philippines' own strategy to build a broader network of security partners. But France's strategy is only half the story. The other half begins in Manila. Over the past few years, the Philippines has quietly transformed the way it thinks about national defense. For decades, its security depended largely on one treaty ally, the United States. Today, that strategy is changing. Instead of relying on a single partner, Manila is building a broader network of security relationships designed to strengthen deterrence, improve interoperability, and make its defenses more resilient. This shift didn't happen overnight. As tensions in the West Philippine Sea continued to rise, the Philippines steadily expanded its circle of defense partners. The United States remained its cornerstone ally, followed by Australia's Visiting Forces Agreement in 2007. Then came Japan in 2024, New Zealand and Canada in 2025, and now France in 2026. The first European country to sign a Visiting Forces Agreement with Manila.
Nilagdaan na ng Pilipinas at France ang status of Visiting Forces Agreement o SOVFA sa bilateral meeting ni na Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. at French Minister of the Armed Forces Catherine Vautrin sa Paris.
Negotiations with the United Kingdom are also underway. Taken together, these aren't isolated agreements. They're part of a much bigger strategy. Defense planners often describe it as security diversification, building multiple partnerships instead of relying too heavily on any single country. Every new agreement creates more opportunities for joint exercises, military training, intelligence sharing, humanitarian assistance, disaster response, and maritime cooperation. The result is a more capable and more interoperable armed forces of the Philippines. France fits naturally into that strategy. It doesn't replace the Philippines' alliance with the United States, nor does it create a new military bloc. Instead, it adds another trusted partner to an expanding network that now stretches across North America, Europe, and the Indo-Pacific. And that sends a clear message. The Philippines isn't replacing old allies. It's making sure it never has to rely on just one. But as Manila expands its network of security partners, another question becomes impossible to ignore. How will China respond to another military partner, especially one from Europe, entering the picture? By now, one thing should be clear. The France-Philippines agreement didn't create this partnership, it formalized it. Long before the document was signed in Paris, France had already been steadily expanding its military presence across the Indo-Pacific and working more closely with the Philippines. One of the clearest examples came earlier this year, when the Charles de Gaulle Carrier Strike Group, France's most powerful naval formation, deployed to the region. The nuclear-powered aircraft carrier conducted joint exercises with the Philippine Navy and Air Force in the South China Sea before making a port call at Subic Bay. It was a powerful reminder that France was no longer an occasional visitor, it was becoming an active security partner. And the carrier deployment wasn't an isolated event. Over the past several years, French warships have participated in major multinational exercises, conducted maritime patrols, expanded humanitarian and disaster response cooperation, and increased professional exchanges with the armed forces of the Philippines. France has also joined larger regional exercises such as Balikatan, training alongside the United States, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, Canada, and the Philippines. Each deployment, exercise, and port visit followed the same direction. More cooperation, more interoperability, more presence. The status of Visiting Forces Agreement simply provides the legal framework to make those activities more regular and more ambitious in the years ahead. But that also raises an important question. If France's military presence in the Indo-Pacific is becoming increasingly visible, how will China interpret the arrival of another capable security partner in one of its most strategically sensitive regions? As the Philippines expands its network of defense partnerships, one question naturally follows. How is China likely to view all of this? While Beijing has not issued a formal response to the France-Philippines status of visiting forces agreement, its broader position has remained consistent. Chinese officials have repeatedly criticized the growing involvement of external military powers in the South China Sea, arguing that it increases strategic competition and complicates regional stability. From Beijing's perspective, the issue isn't France alone. It's the bigger picture. A visiting forces agreement doesn't create a military alliance or establish permanent bases, but it does make military cooperation easier, allowing partners to train together more often, improve interoperability, strengthen maritime awareness, and respond more effectively to crises. On its own, one agreement changes very little, but together, they tell a different story. The Philippines has steadily expanded defense cooperation with the United States, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, Canada, and now France. Rather than relying on a single ally, Manila is building a broader network of security partners, one designed to improve resilience and deter coercion. This comes as tensions in the South China Sea remain high. Coast Guard confrontations, dangerous maritime maneuvers, electronic interference, and increasingly sophisticated surveillance activities have become recurring features of the region. While analysts consider the risk of a full-scale conflict to be low, they also warn that a more crowded operating environment increases the chances of miscalculation. Viewed in that context, the France-Philippines agreement is more than a bilateral deal. It's another sign that the Indo-Pacific security landscape is becoming increasingly interconnected and increasingly multipolar. And that raises the biggest question of all. If this trend continues, what will the Indo-Pacific's balance of power look like a decade from now?
We aim to deepen our cooperation with regional partners with whom we share common values such as upholding international law and ensuring freedom of navigation in shared maritime spaces.
The France-Philippines agreement isn't just about two countries. It's part of a much bigger shift. For years, Europe's relationship with Asia was driven mainly by trade, investment, and diplomacy. Security was largely left to regional countries and the United States. Today, that is beginning to change. As competition in the Indo-Pacific grows, more European nations are increasing their security engagement, not because they want to project power halfway around the world, but because stability in these waters is closely tied to their own economic and strategic interests. France has led that effort, supported by its territories, citizens, and military presence across the Indo-Pacific. But it isn't acting alone. The United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands have all expanded naval deployments, joined regional exercises, and strengthened defense cooperation with Indo-Pacific partners. Together, they reflect a broader European commitment to freedom of navigation, international law, and a stable maritime order. That commitment is also reflected in official strategies adopted by both France and the European Union, which identify the Indo-Pacific as a region of growing strategic importance. The France-Philippines status of visiting forces agreement fits naturally into that larger picture. It shows that developments in the South China Sea are no longer viewed as concerns for Asia alone. These waters carry a significant share of global trade, linking European economies with markets across the Indo-Pacific every day. And that may be the biggest lesson of this story. The Indo-Pacific is no longer just a regional theater. It's becoming one of the defining arenas of global security. Step back from each individual agreement, and a much bigger picture begins to emerge. The France-Philippines status of visiting forces agreement isn't just another defense pact. It's another building block in a new Indo-Pacific security architecture, one based on networks rather than isolated alliances. For decades, the region's security largely revolved around the United States and its bilateral alliances with countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines. Those partnerships remain strong, but today's security landscape is becoming far more interconnected. Countries are increasingly training together, sharing expertise, coordinating maritime operations, and strengthening cooperation beyond their individual ties with Washington. The Philippines is one of the clearest examples of this shift. While its alliance with the United States remains the foundation of its defense, Manila has steadily expanded cooperation with Japan, Australia, France, Canada, New Zealand, South Korea, and ASEAN partners. Each new agreement adds another link to a growing regional network. France's agreement fits naturally into that evolution. As the Philippines' first visiting forces agreement with a European country, it extends that network beyond the traditional Indo-Pacific framework and highlights the growing role of middle powers in regional security. The result is a more flexible and resilient system, one where countries can train together, improve interoperability, share maritime information, and respond more effectively to regional crises. And perhaps that's the biggest takeaway from this story. The Indo-Pacific's future security won't be shaped by one alliance alone, but by an expanding network of partnerships stretching across Asia, Europe, and North America. So where does the France-Philippines partnership go from here? The honest answer is that no one knows for sure. Defense agreements create opportunities, not guarantees. But based on the agreement and the direction both countries have taken, 3 realistic paths stand out. The first is a steady but cautious partnership. France and the Philippines could expand officer exchanges, humanitarian assistance, disaster response, and occasional joint exercises. Even at this level, the agreement would mark a historic milestone as France becomes the Philippines' first European Visiting Forces Agreement partner. The second is deeper operational cooperation. The new legal framework could support more regular naval deployments, expanded participation in exercises like Balikatan, greater maritime surveillance, logistics coordination, and more frequent joint training. Over time, the two militaries would become increasingly interoperable during both security missions and humanitarian operations. The third depends on the broader security environment. If tensions in the Indo-Pacific continue to rise, France could take on a larger role in multinational maritime security, freedom of navigation activities, and regional defense cooperation, consistent with its Indo-Pacific strategy. That wouldn't require a new alliance or permanent bases, but it would deepen France's role as a regional security partner. Which path ultimately emerges will depend on decisions made in Manila, Paris, and the wider Indo-Pacific. But one conclusion is already clear. The France-Philippines Visiting Forces Agreement isn't a promise of what will happen next. It's a framework that gives both countries the flexibility to respond together, whatever the future may bring. France becoming the first European country to sign a visiting forces agreement with the Philippines marks more than a diplomatic milestone. It symbolizes a changing Indo-Pacific. As regional and European partners deepen their cooperation, the security landscape is becoming more interconnected than ever before. Whether this new architecture strengthens peace or intensifies competition remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the future of the Indo-Pacific will not be decided by Asia alone. It will help shape the future of global security.
We have also agreed to sustain, if not further, the visits and cooperation between the French Navy and the Philippine Navy.
The size of China's displacement of the world balance is such that the world must find a new equilibrium, Lee Kuan Yew once warned. Reminding smaller states that survival in a shifting order depends not on size, but on foresight and strong partnerships. That logic now plays out clearly in the Philippines' push for its first defense pact with a European power, unfolding at the Paris Defense and Strategy Forum in March 2026. As Manila moves toward finalizing a status of visiting forces agreement with France, following months of expanded joint drills, including the 2025 deployment of the French carrier Charles de Gaulle, this step signals more than routine diplomacy. It reflects a country adjusting to a harder reality at sea, widening its circle of deterrence beyond traditional partners as sustained pressure in the West Philippine Sea reshapes its strategic choices. To understand why this moment matters, one must look beyond the headlines into the geography that exposes the Philippines, the alliances it is steadily building, the pressure that drives these choices, and the wider return of global powers into Indo-Pacific waters. Each of these layers tells part of the story, and together they explain how a single agreement in Paris fits into a much larger shift now unfolding across the region. Let's begin our discussion. Great powers seek partners when the balance of power begins to shift against them, John Mearsheimer once observed, capturing a truth that echoes far beyond major powers alone. That logic now finds relevance in Southeast Asia, where the Philippines' push for its first defense pact with France at the Paris Defense and Strategy Forum in March 2026 reflects more than routine diplomacy. It reflects pressure accumulated over years, tensions at sea, repeated confrontations in contested waters, and the growing realization that security in the Indo-Pacific is no longer a temporary challenge, but a permanent condition. The proposed status of visiting forces agreement with France is not just legal paperwork, it is the mechanism that turns partnership into presence, allowing structured training, coordinated deployments, and sustained operational cooperation. What makes this moment stand out is timing and momentum working together. French naval deployments, including the 2025 operations of the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle alongside Philippine forces, have already shown that Europe is no longer a distant observer of Asian tensions. Step by step, Manila has widened its circle of partners, building a layered network rather than relying on a single shield. Seen in this light, the Paris Initiative becomes more than a bilateral move. It becomes the opening scene of a larger story. One where the Philippines is learning that survival in contested waters depends not on isolation, but on carefully built connections that stretch far beyond its immediate horizon. Geopolitics at its core begins with the map. As Robert D. Kaplan often reminds readers, geography does not argue, it simply sits there, shaping decisions whether leaders like it or not. The Philippines is a perfect example of this quiet but relentless force. Stretching across more than 7,600 islands, the country sits on the eastern rim of the South China Sea, facing waters that carry nearly 1/3 of global maritime trade every year. These are not empty seas. They are crowded highways of oil tankers, cargo vessels, and naval patrols. Beneath those same waters lie rich fishing grounds that feed millions and energy deposits long believed to hold significant gas reserves. That is the blessing. The exposure, however, lies in the same geography. Places like Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal are not distant dots on a chart. They sit along key approaches that shape movement across the wider region. Over the past year, repeated confrontations near these areas, water cannon incidents, blocking maneuvers, and prolonged shadowing have turned geography into daily pressure rather than distant theory. Look closely at the Philippine map and the challenge becomes obvious. Its islands form long, broken chains rather than a single solid landmass. Supply ships traveling to remote outposts must cross open water, often through narrow approaches that are easy to monitor and difficult to secure alone. Even northern Luzon, facing Taiwan across the Bashi Channel, sits near one of the most sensitive maritime corridors in Asia, a passage used by naval forces moving between the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea. This is why geography leaves Manila little room for complacency. The country cannot move its islands, cannot shorten its coastlines, and cannot close the sea around it. What it can do is reinforce these waters with presence. That is why joint patrols, surveillance flights, and multinational naval exercises have increased in recent years, particularly around the northern and western approaches. In strategic terms, the West Philippine Sea has become more than a territorial question. It has become the center of gravity for national security planning. Every new partnership, every visiting force agreement, every expanded exercise ultimately traces back to the same reality: the shape of the map. Pressure begins in these waters, and so the response must begin there as well. Geography, as history has shown time and again, sets the stage long before strategy enters the room. Diplomats often say that alliances are not built in calm waters. They are built when pressure begins to rise. Philippine defense leaders have echoed a similar line in recent years. Security today is no longer about standing beside one partner, but about standing within a network. That shift is now visible. The Philippines is no longer building its defense posture around a single pillar. It is practicing what strategists call external balancing, a simple but powerful idea in security policy. Spread the risk, build layers, make deterrence collective. The United States remains the anchor under the Mutual Defense Treaty, but the web has widened. Japan has stepped in with coastal radar systems and patrol vessels. Australia has expanded rotational training and joint maritime drills. Canada and New Zealand have joined multilateral patrols that were once limited to a much smaller group. What used to be bilateral security is slowly turning into network deterrence. This widening web became clearer during 2024 and 2025 when joint maritime patrols in the West Philippine Sea began to include several partners operating together. These were not symbolic sail-throughs. They were presence operations, meant to show coordination, improve interoperability, and reinforce maritime domain awareness, terms often used in naval planning, but rooted in simple logic. Ships that train together respond faster under pressure. France enters this picture as a new and important link. For the first time, Manila is reaching beyond its Pacific Circle and drawing in a European partner with real naval capability. French participation in joint drills, carrier deployments, and future visiting forces arrangements signals a shift in mindset. The Philippines is no longer building isolated alliances, it is building layers of reassurance. Each new partner adds depth to the security web, widening the strategic space around the country. France's role in Philippine security planning is not accidental, and it is definitely not symbolic. Many people still see France as a distant European power, but the map tells a different story. France is an Indo-Pacific nation by geography, not just by policy. Its territories in New Caledonia and French Polynesia place French citizens and large maritime zones directly inside the Indo-Pacific, giving Paris a reason to stay present, not just interested. That presence is now becoming more visible. Over the past few years, French naval deployments, including missions led by the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, have moved repeatedly through Southeast Asian waters, signaling that France intends to remain a steady actor in this region, not a temporary visitor. But strategy is not only about ships sailing, it is also about capacity being built. In recent years, France has quietly backed some of the Philippines' most practical maritime upgrades. One of the clearest examples is the patrol boat program now underway between Manila and Paris. Philippine Coast Guard signed a deal worth about $25.8 billion, or roughly $438 million, for 40 fast patrol boats from French shipbuilder OSHA, with first deliveries expected to begin in 2026. These vessels are not small symbolic assets. They are designed for surveillance, law enforcement, and rapid response missions across Philippine waters. Even more important, 20 of the 40 boats are planned to be built locally in the Philippines, allowing technology transfer and long-term maintenance support. For Manila, France brings something different from its traditional partners, a European power that combines diplomacy, naval reach, and industrial capability. And across Europe, a similar pattern is emerging. Stability in the Indo-Pacific is now seen as tied directly to global trade and energy security, especially since a large share of European commerce depends on sea routes that pass through Asian waters. In that sense, France's growing engagement is part of a wider return of European maritime thinking after decades of relative distance. On paper, a status of visiting forces agreement, what strategists call a SOVFA, can look dry and technical. Just legal language, rules, and procedures. But in real-world security, these agreements often decide whether ships can dock, aircraft can land, or troops can train when it matters most. Without them, even friendly forces move slowly, tied down by legal uncertainty. With them, cooperation becomes routine. That is why the negotiations between Manila and Paris, completed in late 2025 and now moving toward formal adoption, matter far more than they appear at first glance. They create the legal doorway that allows forces to operate smoothly inside each other's territory, turning friendship into function. There is a reason the Philippines has relied heavily on similar agreements with partners like the United States and Australia. Those frameworks made possible some of the largest recent exercises across Philippine territory, including operations in northern Luzon, where forces now train near sea lanes facing Taiwan, and along the western coastline overlooking the West Philippine Sea. These drills are not small events anymore. In recent years, multinational exercises have involved thousands of troops, dozens of aircraft, and coordinated naval formations, all moving under shared legal protections that make planning predictable. A French SOFA would extend this same logic to European forces, allowing French ships, surveillance aircraft, and amphibious units to train repeatedly rather than visit only once. The real power of a SOFA lies in what it quietly changes behind the scenes. Diplomacy builds trust, but legal frameworks build readiness. They answer practical questions. Who has jurisdiction? Where can forces deploy? How fast can help arrive? These details rarely make headlines, yet they shape the speed of response during crisis. If finalized, the SOFA between France and the Philippines will do more than add another partner. It will give that partnership structure, rhythm, and staying power. Agreements on paper mean little until ships begin to move. That is where the story naturally continues from legal frameworks to real activity at sea. In 2025, the French carrier strike group led by the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle sailed into waters near northern Luzon and trained alongside Philippine forces. It was not a quiet port visit. Fighter aircraft launched sorties, ships maneuvered in formation, and communication drills tested how quickly two distant militaries could speak the same operational language. Later that same year, French vessels, including surveillance frigates, joined exercises off Mindanao, showing that the cooperation was not a one-time display, but part of a growing pattern. These were not symbolic moves. They were signals, visible to anyone watching the region closely. In naval strategy, presence itself becomes a message. When large warships operate together in contested waters, they communicate readiness without firing a shot. For Manila, hosting advanced platforms from carrier groups to amphibious ships strengthens what planners call maritime domain awareness and forward presence. Two key ideas in modern naval doctrine. For France, repeated deployments show that its Indo-Pacific role is not theoretical but operational. Recent multinational exercises in Philippine waters have grown steadily in size, with thousands of troops and multiple naval and air assets participating, especially in recurring drills like Balikatan, which has expanded significantly in scale since 2023. Each exercise adds familiarity. Each maneuver reduces hesitation. But the real power behind these drills lies in something less visible: interoperability. Modern deterrence is no longer about counting ships alone. It is about whether forces from different countries can function as one when pressure rises. That is why recent exercises have focused heavily on shared command procedures, synchronized communications, and coordinated response drills. In practical terms, this means aircraft from one country can receive guidance from another, ships can share targeting information, and rescue or defense missions can unfold without confusion. These are not ceremonial exercises. They are operational rehearsals meant to prepare for worst-case scenarios that leaders hope will never come. For the Philippines, this approach offers a quiet advantage. Instead of trying to build a massive fleet overnight, a costly and slow process, it strengthens capability through cooperation. A smaller navy linked to capable partners becomes more resilient than its size suggests. This is how deterrence grows today, not through isolated strength, but through connected strength. Every alliance has a story behind it, and in this case, the quiet force shaping Manila's choices is hard to miss. China is rarely named directly in every agreement, yet its actions sit in the background of nearly all recent Philippine security decisions. Over the past few years, the pattern has become too consistent to ignore. Philippine resupply missions to Second Thomas Shoal have repeatedly faced obstruction, including water cannon attacks in 2023 and 2024 that damaged vessels and injured crew members. By 2025 and into early 2026, Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia presence around contested features had grown more regular, not occasional. In some areas, dozens of Chinese vessels have been recorded operating near Philippine-held positions at the same time. Turning routine supply runs into tense standoffs rather than logistical tasks. What once looked like isolated encounters now appears as a steady method, pressure applied slowly, persistently, and in full view. This pattern has forced a shift in Manila's thinking. Philippine defense planners are no longer reacting to single incidents, they are responding to what looks like a sustained campaign of maritime pressure. Surveillance patrols have increased. Joint maritime operations with partners have expanded. Intelligence sharing, what military planners call maritime domain awareness, has become more important than ever. The reasoning is defensive, not provocative. When pressure repeats itself often enough, doing nothing becomes riskier than building new partnerships. In this environment, cooperation is not about signaling aggression, it is about reducing exposure. The Philippines is not moving outward because it wants confrontation. It is doing so because geography and repeated incidents have narrowed its room to maneuver. China's growing naval and Coast Guard capacity adds another layer to this reality. Over the past decade, China has built what is now considered the largest Coast Guard fleet in the world, supported by maritime militia vessels that operate alongside regular forces. This expansion changes the balance at sea, not through direct conflict, but through constant presence. Agreements with France and other partners should be understood through this lens. They are not random diplomatic gestures or prestige projects. They are calculated responses to a shifting balance of power. Responses shaped by repeated encounters at sea and the recognition that pressure, if left unanswered, tends to grow. Europe's renewed interest in the Indo-Pacific is no longer theoretical, it is visible at sea. France has taken the lead, but it is not alone. In recent years, several European navies have increased their deployments into Asian waters, conducting freedom of navigation missions, joint exercises, and port visits across Southeast Asia. These actions reflect a growing recognition that Europe's economic stability depends heavily on maritime trade routes that pass through the Indo-Pacific. Disruptions in these waters would not remain regional problems, they would ripple into European markets and industries. France's role stands out because of its sustained presence. With overseas territories and permanent forces stationed across the Indo-Pacific, Paris has both the legal authority and operational capability to act as a resident power. Its naval deployments over the past few years, including carrier-led missions and frigate patrols, have demonstrated continuity rather than occasional engagement. This steady rhythm of presence has made France a credible partner for countries like the Philippines seeking dependable external support. The broader European shift signals something deeper about global security trends. The Indo-Pacific is no longer seen as a distant theater, but as a central arena of strategic competition. As European states return to these waters, they bring with them new diplomatic weight and military capability. For Manila, this creates an opportunity to diversify its partnerships and widen its strategic horizon.
Lahat ng tauhan magtungo sa paliparan.
The Philippine Coast Guard is set to acquire 40 units of fast patrol craft from France. The Transportation Department signed a contract with French shipbuilding company SOVFA.
The Philippines is set to boost its maritime defense with France's help. A new program for 40 patrol vessels shows Manila is no longer alone in the West Philippine Sea crisis. This deal with French shipbuilder OCEA goes beyond just getting boats. It strengthens a strategic partnership and shifts the Philippines' maritime stance. As tensions with China rise in the South China Sea, these fast patrol crafts will provide the PCG with the speed and flexibility needed to protect Filipino fishermen and territorial waters. The agreement signals a strong alignment. France is expanding its presence in the Indo Pacific, while the Philippines is ramping up its defense. Regional allies are also coming together against coercion at sea. With half of the vessels to be built locally, the deal will boost the Philippines' shipbuilding industry. It will create jobs, transfer technology, and strengthen long-term defense capabilities. This move shows Manila is building its capacity, forming alliances, and resisting isolation amid China's growing influence. However, this moment brings expectations. The vessels must be integrated into strategy and joint operations, not just shown off. Their success depends on readiness, coordination, and political will. One thing is clear, the Philippines won't just endure anymore. With France's support, it is choosing to stand firm, build, and navigate its own path in the Indo-Pacific, defending its waters with strategy and purpose. The agreement became official on 23 May 2025. The Philippine Coast Guard signed a landmark contract with the French shipbuilder OCEA. This deal includes 40 fast patrol craft, each about 35 meters long. It is one of the largest surface asset deals by the PCG. The goal is to boost law enforcement, search and rescue, and maritime security in contested waters. The project is valued at around 400 to 406 million euros, or about 25 to 26 billion Philippines pesos. It will be financed through French Official Development Assistance, ODA. This setup eases the financial burden on the Philippines. It also shows that France is investing in a long-term maritime partnership, not just selling ships. This deal combines diplomacy, defense cooperation, and industrial collaboration. A key feature of the agreement is its local shipbuilding component. Of the 40 vessels, 20 will be built in the Philippines with French technical support and technology transfer. This program will expand the fleet and revive local industry. It will also upskill Filipino workers and modernize domestic shipyards, paving the way for future self-reliance. The vessels will be based on OCEA's FPB 110 Mk2 design. These patrol craft are fast, agile, and made of aluminum. They can reach speeds up to 35 knots and have a range of about 700 nautical miles. These traits make them ideal for interdiction, sovereignty patrols, and rapid response missions in the West Philippine Sea and Philippine EEZ. Their size and speed are perfect for operations where presence and reaction time matter most. The contract includes integrated logistics support, ILS, crew training, and possibly a local maintenance hub. OCEA aims to be a long-term partner, helping the PCG maintain readiness and reliability once the patrol craft arrive. This deal comes at a time when the South China Sea is one of the world's most tense maritime areas. Scarborough Shoal, the Spratly Islands, and parts of the West Philippine Sea are contested daily. Coast Guard blockades, militia swarms, and aggressive Chinese patrols make this clear. For Manila, having patrols is essential. It's key to sovereignty. Adding 40 fast patrol craft boosts the Philippines' ability to keep watch, assert rights, and respond swiftly to incidents that can escalate quickly. In these contested waters, the first country to arrive and stay shapes the story, enforces the law, and gains legitimacy. This change aligns with a broader shift in Philippine maritime security. For years, the PCG focused on domestic tasks like coastal monitoring, anti-smuggling, search and rescue, and disaster response. However, as external threats grew, the Philippines shifted toward maritime awareness, territorial defense, and enforcing rules beyond its coastline, especially in its exclusive economic zone, EEZ. The patrol craft fleet is vital to this change. While bigger warships deter, fast patrol craft are persistent. They chase, document, intercept, and hold their ground in the gray zone where most modern maritime conflicts occur. At the same time, this deal marks a strategic move by France, which is expanding its role in the Indo-Pacific. With territories like New Caledonia and French Polynesia, France is already a significant player in the region. Supporting the Philippines helps uphold freedom of navigation, counter unilateral expansion, and reinforce a rules-based order at sea. Paris recognizes the Indo-Pacific as the new geopolitical center. Assisting Manila benefits both principle and interest. It strengthens an ally, balances China, and enhances France's influence in Asian security matters. Finally, the patrol craft agreement aims not just for defense, but also for building domestic capacity. By constructing half of the vessels in Philippine shipyards, the deal boosts the country's stagnant maritime industry. This creates Filipino jobs, develops local skills, and revives the build from within philosophy. It ensures the Philippines is not just a buyer of security, but a builder of it, merging foreign partnerships with national industrial growth. The partnership between Manila and Paris has a strong foundation. It began with the PCG's acquisition of the BRP Gabriela Salang, an offshore patrol vessel built by OCEA in France. This ship has proven that French-built vessels can operate effectively in Philippine waters. The successful experience built trust. France delivered reliable performance, and the Philippines recognized the value of European engineering for its maritime future. Now, the new 40-vessel agreement marks a significant change. It shifts from isolated purchases to structured capability building. What started as one successful delivery is evolving into an industrial partnership, a fleet program, and possibly a multi-decade modernization effort. Instead of buying ships one by one from various suppliers, Manila is creating a unified, French-backed patrol fleet. This enables shared training, maintenance, and logistics, which strengthens the Coast Guard force. This relationship extends beyond just patrol vessels. France aims to support the Philippines in maritime safety systems, coastal monitoring, local shipyard development, and logistics hubs. This cooperation suggests a broader goal. France is not only selling ships, but also helping build capacity in the Philippines, boosting industry and infrastructure. Over time, this could enhance local shipbuilding, improve maritime standards, and position the Philippines as a stronger maritime state in Southeast Asia. Symbolically, this partnership holds strategic importance. As China asserts pressure in the West Philippine Sea, a major Western naval power backing Philippine maritime security sends a message of solidarity. For Manila, this offers diplomatic leverage. For Beijing, it serves as a reminder that the Philippines is not alone. For the region, it demonstrates that Europe is actively engaging in the Indo-Pacific, not merely observing, but participating. The arrival of 40 new fast patrol craft will quickly change the Philippine Coast Guard's response capabilities. These boats can travel up to 35 knots, allowing the PCG to cover larger areas more quickly, especially in tense regions like the West Philippine Sea. Currently, when Chinese vessels harass Filipino fishermen, response teams often arrive after the situation escalates. With faster boats, the Philippines can respond sooner, enforce its presence, and intervene more effectively. These vessels offer flexibility for various missions, which is vital in a country facing both foreign and domestic maritime challenges. The fast patrol craft can switch between law enforcement, anti-smuggling, search and rescue, disaster response, and maritime surveillance as needed. In Philippine waters, where crises range from typhoons to territorial disputes, a platform that can adapt quickly is a significant advantage. Operationally, the new 35-meter ships improve the PCG's force mix, bridging the gap between small coastal boats and larger offshore patrol vessels from Japan and France. Previously, the PCG had to deploy larger ships for minor incidents, which was inefficient and costly. Now, the Coast Guard can match the right vessel to each mission. Fast patrol craft for quick interdictions and larger OPVs for longer missions. This layered fleet approach aligns with how advanced maritime forces operate, bringing the Philippines closer to that standard. With half the fleet built locally, the the impact goes beyond patrol missions. Local construction allows for easier maintenance, quicker repairs, and less reliance on foreign shipyards. This is crucial since a ship is only useful when it's at sea. Localizing maintenance and logistics enhances operational readiness and develops Filipino shipyard skills, enabling the country to support and eventually produce more vessels at home. Strategically, these boats can be deployed to Scarborough Shoal, Ayungin Shoal, and other tense areas in the West Philippine Sea, providing the Philippines with constant visibility and quick response capabilities in waters dominated by China. While a patrol craft may not deter a superpower, it can document, challenge, shadow, intercept, and maintain a presence, buying time for diplomatic, legal, or military actions. In the current gray zone environment, speed, presence, and persistence are crucial, and these boats offer all three. Beijing will not overlook the meaning behind France supplying 40 fast patrol craft to the Philippines. As Western and European involvement grows in Manila's maritime security, China will respond in various ways. First, expect diplomatic protest and sharp statements from Beijing's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This will likely be paired with increased gray zone activities at sea. More Coast Guard patrols, militia swarming Filipino fishermen, and a rise in bumping, blocking, and harassment near contested areas like Scarborough Shoal and Ayungin Shoal. China aims to show that while foreign ships may come and go, its vessels will remain unchallenged. The message to Beijing is clear. The Philippines is no longer isolated. The fast patrol craft deal is more than just a purchase. It signals that alliances matter. Manila is bolstering its capabilities with support beyond traditional U.S. help. This complicates China's strategy. Instead of just targeting the Philippines, Beijing now faces a growing network of allies, including France, Japan, Australia, and the U.S., all boosting Manila's presence and resilience at sea. Regionally, the effects will ripple across Southeast Asia. Countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia will watch Manila's advancements. They will see that outside middle powers are willing to invest in counterbalancing efforts. France's involvement sends a strong message. China's maritime dominance is not accepted as a given, and even European countries support a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. This could encourage ASEAN states that have been hesitant to act independently. However, the Philippines must ensure these 40 vessels become operational assets, not just symbolic trophies. This requires more than just hulls. It needs strategy, training, rules of engagement, data sharing, and a consistent presence. Skilled operators must crew these ships, guided by clear authority and supported by joint intelligence and legal frameworks. Without this, capability becomes superficial. Ultimately, the true strategic value of this partnership will be judged not by the hardware, but by ongoing use, operational strategy, and interoperability with allies. If the Philippines institutionalizes these elements, the patrol craft will aid in long-term deterrence, not just short-term headlines. In the Indo-Pacific, where persistence is as crucial as power, sustained presence at sea will reshape the balance.
What makes this deal especially important for the Philippines is not just the number of patrol craft, but where they will be built. Half of the 40 vessels will be constructed in local shipyards. This turns the agreement into more than a security project. It becomes an industrial transformation effort. With the technology transfer provisions, Filipino engineers, welders, naval architects, and maritime technicians will learn modern shipbuilding techniques, advanced fabrication standards, and European-level quality control processes. This knowledge will stay in the Philippines and grow over time. This approach creates immediate economic value and long-term capability. Local construction will create jobs, revitalize coastal industrial zones, and strengthen smaller maritime suppliers. It also aligns with the country's goal of reviving its proud shipbuilding tradition. The Philippines has always been a nation of seafarers and shipyard workers. This deal connects to that history and brings it into a modern security context. Each vessel built locally means paychecks, expertise, and pride instead of money going overseas. More importantly, the project lays the groundwork for a future defense industrial base. Today, these fast patrol craft may use French blueprints, but tomorrow, the Philippines could design and produce its own coastal patrol assets, logistics craft, or unmanned surface vessels. This is how maritime nations become self-reliant, by building capacity, not dependence. The mindset of early Filipino shipbuilders,
Ginagawa natin dito, gawaning Pilipino, para sa Pilipino, can return in a serious, modern way. Yet ambition comes with challenges. Local shipbuilding will need skilled labor, reliable supply chains, and technical oversight. Traditional craftsmanship must now work alongside precision machining and digital shipyard tools. The Philippine maritime workforce will need upskilling and support to meet international standards. If these challenges can be overcome, the payoff will be huge. A self-sustaining maritime capability backed by an industry that can build, maintain, and eventually design the nation's own ships. Despite clear benefits, the France-Philippines Patrol Craft Agreement has risks. The first challenge is time. Even with strong support, big fleet programs take years. Construction, sea trials, crew training, and logistics must align before a vessel can operate well. If tensions in the West Philippine Sea rise quickly, the Philippines may need ships sooner than they arrive. The second concern is sustainment. Buying ships is just the start. Maintaining, crewing, fueling, and upgrading them over the years adds real costs. A fleet's strength depends on its readiness. Without steady budgets for spare parts, dock time, crew recruitment, and training, even new vessels can become useless. The Philippines must ensure long-term sustainment plans match the scale of acquisition to avoid weakening its capability. Third, operational scope must be realistic. These 35-meter craft are fast and versatile, but they aren't blue water combatants. They have limits in range, endurance, and survivability, preventing them from replacing larger patrol vessels or warships. Their strength is in quick response and steady maritime presence, not major sea control. Without complementary assets like drones and naval escorts, their impact will be limited. The fourth challenge is interoperability and command integration. To be effective, these patrol craft must work well with the Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, local agencies, and allied fleets. This needs unified doctrines, shared communication, joint command protocols, and clear rules of engagement. Without integration, patrol boats may operate alone, reducing their effectiveness in gray zone encounters. Finally, the Philippines must balance its growing partnerships. France is a strong ally, but Manila must also manage ties with the US, Japan, Australia, and others, while considering Beijing's reactions. The goal is to strengthen deterrence without causing escalation, and to build alliances without losing strategic autonomy. The true test of this historic France-Philippines deal will unfold not in the signing room, but in the months and years that follow. The first milestone will be delivery and construction timelines, with 20 vessels expected to roll out of French shipyards before local production ramps up in the Philippines. How quickly the Philippines can absorb and deploy these first hulls, and how efficiently local shipbuilding can follow, will reveal whether the nation is ready to sustain a fleet of this size. Much attention will also be on where these vessels are based. The world will be watching if Manila chooses to permanently station units in the West Philippine Sea, placing them directly in China's shadow, and signaling an unambiguous commitment to defend its waters.
The next question lies in training, doctrine, and operational integration. The Philippine Coast Guard must now decide how these craft will fit into daily patrol